Let's say that you wanted to learn how to play the piano and you want to get up to an intermediate level. And I gave you the choice of two different programs. In program A, you're going to practice half an hour a day, 5 days a week, and it's going to take you 3 years in order to get to that intermediate level of playing. However, on program B, you're going to practice half an hour a day, 5 days a week, but it's only going to take you 1 year to get to that intermediate level. Which one would you choose? Well, if you're like me and you choose B, then this is the video for you, because I'm Dr. Igor Yurichevich, and this is behavior modification. Let's go. All right, so today we're going to talk about shaping, and specifically we're going to talk about increasing shaping efficiency. Now, shaping is one of these magical techniques that we can use to take somebody from a beginner level and basically turn them into an expert. So many of the expert level complex behaviors that we have achieved in our lifetime, we have achieved through shaping. So we're going to take a look at shaping from the perspective, first off, of a study by Isaac et al., where they are treating two patients who both suffer from schizophrenia, and they're trying to reinstate verbal behavior in those patients, and they use shaping. So if you have any questions at all about what shaping is, before we begin this video, I highly recommend, for a discussion of shaping, check out the How to Shape Behavior video, link in the description. And then also check out the discussion on the benefits and limitations of shaping. So what are the good parts of the shaping, but what are some of the things that you should look out for? And just a warning, the audio quality on those two videos, not the greatest, but it is a nice example of how shaping can improve behavior, even creating content for YouTube. But basically it gives you an overview of that idea of shaping, that idea of differential reinforcement of successive approximations towards a target behavior in order to help you reach that target behavior. So once you do that overview, let's go back to Isaacs et al. So again, they were treating two patients. Patient A had catatonic schizophrenia, and patient B was schizophrenic mixed type with catatonic features predominating. So these are two very extreme, very difficult mental issues to deal with. And just to kind of show you how extreme, Isaacs et al. Were trying to reinstate verbal behavior in these patients. So they were trying to do something as simple as getting patient A to say the word gum if they wanted gum or if they saw gum. They were trying to reinstate the verbal behavior of, here's a piece of gum, and you look at it and say, oh, gum. That's it. That was the target behavior that they were trying to get to. And they used shaping techniques in order to do that. Now, we're not going to go over all the techniques and procedures that they used in order to do this. I just want to use this as a very important example. First off, I do not want to minimize at all the miraculous achievement of reinstating verbal behavior in somebody suffering from catatonic schizophrenia. Just to get to say the word gum, just to reinstate any verbal behavior is like a miraculous achievement. So first off, for Isaacs et al., amazing, amazing job. Not going to diminish their results whatsoever. However, I do want to point out a very important factor in this experiment or in this treatment, and that was how long it took them to get patient A just to say the word gum. And if you take a look at their training recordings, it was only in week five of training, that patient A was finally able to see gum. So again, miraculous outcome. However, it did take 5 whole weeks to reach this goal. And the question that we want to ask as behavior analysts is, could we have gotten there any sooner? So this is something that Cooper, Heron, and Heward comment on when they're discussing this article. And what they say is that during the early stages of the program by Isaacs et al., the psychologists waited for the next approximation of the behavior to appear before delivering the reinforcer. Since waiting can be time-consuming and wasteful, Isaacs and colleagues improved efficiency by... So let's take a look at this quote here. So in this case, Isaacs et al. Used that classic shaping technique where you watch the behavior, and as random variations in the behavior occur, you're going to get something that's closer to the target behavior, and then you reinforce that. So you just wait for the next approximation to occur, and then you deliver the reinforcer. That's how shaping technically works. However, that waiting, it can be time consuming, and importantly, it can be wasteful. So if you can make shaping more efficient, that means that you can then move on to training more target behaviors and improving the quality of life, for example, for patient A. So Isaacs and colleagues actually were able to improve their efficiency later on in their treatments by doing various techniques. And we're going to take a look at not necessarily their techniques, but we're going to take a look at 4 techniques that you can use to improve the efficiency of your shaping. Basically, 4 techniques to make sure that we can shape as fast as possible and we can reach that target behavior as quickly as possible so that we can use that time that we save for even more training to train more individuals or to train the same individual on other behaviors. All right, so let's get going with number 1. And just a brief aside, we are going to be retiring Countdown Girl for a little bit. So this is going to be her last hurrah for a while. So enjoy the Countdown Girl for the last time. But we are going to start off with technique number 1. And technique number 1 is using a discriminative stimulus for reinforcement in your shaping. So what a discriminative stimulus is, this is a stimulus that indicates to the learner that reinforcement is available for a specific behavior. It's basically the go signal that says, hey, you know what? If you do this behavior now, you're going to get reinforced for it. That's what a discriminative stimulus is. So let's see this with an example. So let's say that you were trying to teach somebody how to do public speaking. And public speaking has a bunch of different behaviors, but one thing that you want to make sure that somebody's doing when they're doing public speaking is that they're not just reading from their notes. Because if they're reading from their notes, they tend not to connect with the audience and they just stay there and read their notes, oftentimes in a very monotone way. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that they look up every once in a while and connect with their audience. So let's say that that is the behavior that we're trying to shape. We're trying to shape that look up behavior so that people can connect with their audience when they're publicly speaking. If that's what you're trying to do, then one thing that you can do is you can just wait. You can just wait and the person will be reading from their notes and they will not be looking up. And maybe eventually they will look up. But it might take you 10 sessions before they ever look up from their notes. A more efficient way is to use a discriminative stimulus, something that lets them know, hey, if you look up now, you're going to get rewarded. And oftentimes that's as simple as using a verbal cue. So you as a teacher can basically say, well, hey, you know what? You're not looking up, you're not reading, but if you look up, then I will give you a reinforcer. So while they're looking down at their notes, you can just simply say, hey, look up from your notes. And they'll look up and they'll deliver a little bit of the speech. And then you can reinforce that. And you can say, oh, hey, wow, that was so much better. Way to go. Give them all that social approval reinforcement. And then that's a way to speed shaping along by simply using that discriminative reinforcer of a verbal cue to let them know that, hey, if you do this behavior now, if you do this next successive approximation, you will get reinforced. That's that discriminative stimulus. Eventually, you're going to want to fade that discriminative stimulus over time. So rather than continually saying, look up from your notes, and then they look up and they get reinforced, eventually you're going to want to say, you just do something like, look, and then they can look up from their notes. And then eventually you might just have like a little gesture where you're like, this, and that makes them look up from their notes. And eventually you just fade it to, you don't have to say it anymore. And now they look up from their notes naturally. You've reached that target behavior efficiently through shaping. All right, technique number 2. The second technique is to use physical guidance to actually enhance shaping. So this is where you have direct physical assistance onto the learner to guide their behavior. So let's say that you are trying to teach somebody a golf swing. You can use the techniques previously. These are techniques that can be combined across, a shaping protocol. But let's say that you wanted to teach somebody a golf swing. One of the ways to do it is to actually physically assist them in doing that golf swing. You actually grab their hands and put them in the correct position. You actually move them through the entire golf swing. You can take their feet and plant them in the correct position relative to the ball. You can do all of these things and actually physically guide them, manually guide them through the entire behavior. Now, this will, again, allow them to more efficiently get to that next iteration of the behavior rather than if you just let them swing the golf club and we're waiting for them to use the proper technique. So also importantly, while this behavior does let you go, while this technique does let you go to the target behavior and shape it more efficiently and more quickly, it's also important that those physical prompts should be faded over time. So you might start with a full-on bear hug, teaching this individual how to golf, but eventually you're going to want to pull back on the physical assistance and maybe get to the point where just in their setup, you just kind of tap their shoulder and go, hey, your shoulder's in the wrong position, or tap their elbow and say, hey, your arm's got to be straight. You don't actually say it because this is the physical guidance portion of it, but you just tap their shoulder and they know, okay, my shoulder needs to be down further. And you just tap their elbow and they know, okay, my elbow needs to be straight. And you fade those over time to the point where physical guidance is no longer required, but you have very efficiently shaped them to an improved golf swing. All right, number 3. The third technique is to use imitative prompts for efficiency. So imitative prompts are kind of like physically assisted prompts, except you're not directly touching the individual. You're just imitating the behavior that you want them to achieve. And again, this is a way to move them from where they are up those successive approximations in a very efficient manner. So this is demonstration-based learning. This is basically modeling the behavior. So if you were trying to teach somebody how to dance, one way to do this is to just imitate the dancing behavior for them and just let them say, you know what, just watch me and do what I do. And then you move your hands like this and they move their hands like that. And you move your arms like this and they move their arms like that. And you tilt your head this way and they tilt their head that way. And you move your legs in a certain way and they move their legs in a certain way. And you basically use these imitative prompts to get them to the point where they're at that next approximation to their target behavior. And then much like using a discriminative stimulus or the physical assistance, you fade this over time. So maybe at the beginning, you're doing the full routine with full movements as you move through the routine and as they're imitating you. And then maybe later on, you tone that down and you're not moving your arms quite as much, but just kind of giving them the general direction or maybe cues to when this should occur. And then eventually it might just be little subtle like, and like that, like just little things that cue when the motions should be occurring. And then eventually that goes away and you don't have any sort of imitative prompts for them at all. So that was technique number 3. And the final one is technique number 4. And technique number 4 is the percentile schedules for precision in shaping. And this one comes about because traditionally shaping relied on qualitative judgments. It was often said that shaping was more of an art than science. And what I mean by that is, let's say that you were shaping that golf swing. You were teaching somebody how to do a golf swing, and you wanted them to swing the club at a certain speed, and you wanted them to keep one of their arms straight as they moved through the backswing. Let's say that you have all these goals that you wanted them to meet. Well, how much straighter does their arm need to be on the next swing in order for them to get reinforced? How much faster does that club face have to move in order for them to get reinforced? How much more correctly placed do their feet have to be than last time for them to get reinforced? All of these are kind of judgments that were oftentimes made previously on qualitative decisions, kind of gut feelings that the teacher, the behaviorist would have. There is a better way or a alternative way to do this, which is using percentile schedules. And these percentile schedules basically introduce the ability to use quantitative precision to determine what is the next successive approximation that you are going to reinforce. So let's illustrate this with an example. So let's say that you are trying to teach a child how to do an alphabet puzzle. And you tested this child and they took 2 minutes to complete this alphabet puzzle. So in the beginning, they would look around, they would be like, okay, what is the first letter of the alphabet? And they would look at the puzzle and be like, okay, it's A, where's A? All right, A's, okay, there it is, so we put it there. And then, wait, what's the second? What am I looking for now? Oh, it's B. All right, we'll put B there. And let's say that it takes him 2 minutes. And your goal behavior is to get this child to 30 seconds on this puzzle. You want them to sit down at the puzzle and just be like, all right, boom, A, boom, B, boom, C, boom, D, and be able to do that in 30 seconds. So let's say that we are going to shape this behavior and we decide that we're going to reinforce this child if they can do this in 90 seconds. Let's say that that is our first training session. We're going to reinforce the child if they can do this puzzle in 90 seconds because we want to increase the speed at which they can complete the puzzle. And let's say that we do 20 trials under this condition, this reinforcement criteria. Well, in this case, first trial, the child does the puzzle in 81 seconds. Second trial, they do it in 109 seconds. Third trial, they get it in 80 seconds. All the way up to their 20th trial, they do that in 111 seconds. In this case, they meet that 90-second criteria 10 times. So in those 10 sessions, they would get reinforced. So there were 20 trials, and they got reinforced 10 times. So we're ready to move up to the next level of their reinforcement. We're ready to move up to the next successive approximation that's going to get us closer to those 30 seconds. But what should that next level be? What should that next successive approximation be? Well, we wouldn't want to choose the slowest time because that's going to be way, way too easy, right? I mean, that's just going to be them reinforcing, getting reinforcement every single time. There's going to be no pressure to move them quicker. There's going to be no incentive for them to improve their behavior if this is the slowest that they ever go. On the other hand, we're not going to want to choose their fastest time either. So even though they did it in 64 seconds once, they only did it in 64 seconds once. So if we choose that as our new criteria, if we say to ourselves, hey, we're going to shoot for the moon, they did it in 64 seconds, that's their new reinforcement criteria, that's going to be too hard because they're only going to get reinforcement 1 out of 20 times. That's not going to be enough reinforcement. And basically, you've instituted an extinction procedure where they're doing the puzzle and not getting reinforced. And that's going to lead to them not wanting to do the puzzle anymore. So how should you choose? How should you choose that next level? Where in between that 64 second, way too hard, 120 seconds, way too easy, where in between should we set that new criteria to be maximally efficient? Well, Athens et al. In their Shaping Academic Task Engagement with Percentile Schedules actually suggested a quantitative way to choose that next duration, a quantitative way to choose what the next successive approximation should be. So let's take a look at their suggestion. So their suggestion is that the next reinforcement criteria should be K equals n plus 1 times 1 minus W. So what are all those letters mean? Well, let's take a look at those. So K, what that is K is the level that you need to meet for the next successive approximation. That's the next level of reinforcement. And you get K. K specifies the response rank that must be exceeded for reinforcement. And we'll get to exactly what that means when we take a look at the example. But this is the response rank. So you take a look at all their responses, and do we go with their highest response for the next one? Do they go with their second level of response for the next one? Do we go with their 19th level response for the next criteria? That's what K is going to tell us. And we figure out K by taking a look at M. And M is the number of recent observations that we are considering for this equation. And we also take a look at W. And W is the reinforcement density. Basically, what percentage of trials does this child get reinforced on? So let's take a look, and we're going to use this equation here to figure out what should the next level be if we were shaping this particular child, trying to get them faster and faster on this letter puzzle. Well, the first thing that we have here is we have the number of recent observations that we're considering. So we are considering 20 recent observations. These are the last 20 sessions that this child completed, and we have data for all of them. So we're considering 20 sessions. Next, we take a look at the reinforcement density. And this individual was reinforced 10 times out of those 20 sessions. So the reinforcement density is 10 over 20, it's 50%. They're getting reinforced 50% of the time. And if we plug all that in to the K equals n plus 1 times 1 minus W equation, what we get is we get 10.5. We're going to round that down to 10. And what that means is that the response rank that must be exceeded for reinforcement is going to be their 10th best performance during those 20 trials. So in order to figure that out, we take those 20 trials, we order them from best to worst, from fastest to slowest, and we're going to look for the 10th best one. So we're not going to choose the best one. That's way too hard. We're not going to set the criteria at 64 seconds. We're not going to choose the second best. We're not going to choose the third best. We're going to go all the way down to the 10th highest performance, which in this case is 89 seconds, and that's going to be our new criteria. So notice that in this case, we're going from our previous criteria of 90 seconds, and we're going to move it up just 1 second. That's what the analysis indicates for this new criteria. So that's very counterintuitive. You probably felt like it should be moved up a lot more. But in this case, according to Athens et al., the next step up should only be a 1 second improvement in his performance on this puzzle task. Now, what are some of the findings that Athens et al. Discovered using this technique? Well, the first thing is that you want to make sure that you have sufficient observations in order to use this equation. So don't use this equation if you only have like 3 observations or 5 observations. What they found was that 20 observations was that optimal level to get a good shaping criteria for your next successive approximation. One of the drawbacks of this approach is that this is sometimes difficult to use in applied settings. So sometimes it's impractical in applied settings for a couple of reasons. One, sometimes it's difficult to measure quantitatively the behavior that you're trying to approximate. So if you're measuring something like the bend of a person's elbow on their golf swing, it's hard to measure that in real time and then enter it into this, into this formula. Also, even if you can measure things quantitatively, like these durations for the puzzle, sometimes it's just difficult to do that in real time. You're going to need mathematical and software ability to put that into real time. It gets a lot easier now that we have smartphones that have apps, but still, again, sometimes this is just not feasible to do in real time, to actually do these calculations as you move through the procedures. And finally, one big unanswered question is, how much does this actually improve efficiency over just using a behavior analyst's gut feeling or instinct for how much quicker to move the training along? What's the next successive approximation supposed to be? However, 2 benefits that potentially come out of this equation. Number one is that if it does show that this is actually more efficient, it gives us a quantitative way of increasing the efficiency. And we can always tinker with the equation to make it even more efficient. But again, this gives us a nice quantitative algorithm that we can use in order to make shaping as efficient as possible. And the other big benefit of this, and this is a huge benefit, is that anybody can do this on day 1 of their work as a behavior analyst. So what I mean by that is that if you take somebody who's using a gut feeling in shaping, over years of experience as a behavior analyst, over years of experience treating behavior, you can develop that gut feeling. You can develop that instinct, but it might take years for you to become a very efficient shaper. However, something that's mathematical like this could be taught to somebody and they could use it on day 1. And considering the need that we have for behavior analysts, for this type of work in our communities, having a procedure where shaping can become incredibly efficient for somebody on their first day of the job as a behavior analyst is huge. So I'm very excited to see where the research takes this and what new developments can be made to increase the efficiency of shaping. All right, so that is it for what I wanted to cover today. So today we took a look at increasing shaping efficiency. We took a look at discriminative stimuli and how to use them in shaping. We took a look at using physical guidance to enhance your shaping. We took a look at using imitative prompts to increase the efficiency of your shaping. And then lastly, we took a look at using percentile schedules to make sure that your shaping is very precise and also increase that efficiency. So next time, we're going to continue on with shaping by taking a look at the modern principles of shaping. So now we took a look at how to make them efficient. Next time, we're going to take a look at what are the best ways to implement shaping when you put it into the real world. So this is going to be based on the classic book by Karen Pryor called Don't Shoot the Dog. So if you are on team Don't Shoot the Dog, then I will see you next time. But until then, stay frosty, stay functional, go modify some behavior. All right, so this blooper is really easy. I forgot to record my screen on the first go through of this. So yeah, struggle bus. It's real.
Now we get to go back to the beginning.